Have you ever heard a voice that didn't come from anyone's mouth, yet it echoed inside your mind as if it rose from a place deeper than thought could ever reach? A sound not made of words, but of knowing. A whisper from beyond your line of sight, yet clearer than anything ever spoken aloud. That morning, just before everything in my life broke apart, I heard it. It wasn't a warning. It was an invitation. It's time to come home. But I didn't understand. Home? Where? And why today? My name is Silas Monroe. I used to be a stage actor, someone who lived for roles and applause. But after a painful collapse, I stepped away from the lights and moved to a small town where no one knew my name. I spent my days writing plays no one read and painting canvases no one saw. I lived as if waiting for life to apologize. But that day, I realized I wasn't waiting. I was hiding. That morning was cold. The train station still held a sheen of dew across the stone benches. An old friend had visited, and I was walking him to the train. Nothing special, no dramatic goodbye, just a few unfinished conversations and a glance that tried to hide something unspoken. When the train arrived, time seemed to slow. A child ran past and dropped her doll. I bent down to pick it up. Then, for no reason at all, I turned around. And that's when I saw her, standing alone on the platform. No one was beside her. She didn't blink. She just looked at me, not with her eyes, but with a kind of knowing, like she had known me forever. She smiled, and I heard that voice again, clear as day. Silas, it's time. Before I could process what was happening, a train whistle screamed through my bones. Someone pulled me, a shove, a jolt, a burst of white. Then, nothing. No pain, no sound, just the strangest feeling. I was falling, not downward, but outward, out of my body, out of time, out of the name Silas Monroe I had worn my whole life. I saw myself lying there on the tracks, a sight no one should ever witness on their own body. But I wasn't afraid. I felt light, not because I had died, but because for the first time I didn't have to play any role at all. And just when I thought I was dissolving into nothingness, a light appeared. It wasn't blinding, but it stopped every thought in its tracks. From within it emerged a presence I couldn't name. It wasn't human, it wasn't divine, it wasn't a shadow, but it knew me. It called me by a name I had never heard before, yet it felt as familiar as if my soul had whispered it from the beginning of time. If you think the strangest things only happen in novels, get ready. Because what I'm about to share with you about that being of light, about my first conversation with what I would come to understand as my guardian angel, won't just make you question what comes after death. It may make you start questioning how you're living right now. And I promise, after this, you'll never look in the mirror the same way again. When my body was left behind on the tracks, something strange happened. I didn't feel fear. Instead of chaos, there was absolute silence. Not the kind you know in this world, but a silence so deep, so complete, it peeled away every thought. No more voices, no more train, no more inner noise. Just a space, colorless, without edges, without direction, but vast enough to make me feel like I had stepped into a different dimension where time no longer meant anything. I stood there, or maybe I wasn't standing at all, just present within that vast emptiness, and I began to remember. But not memories like a film playing in reverse, more like sensations. Every small sorrow I had buried, every time I hurt someone and pretended to forget, every dream I let die without ever facing why. It all surged through me like a hidden river surfacing. No one accused me, there was no courtroom, no angry God, but there was truth shining on me with a light that didn't need to speak, only needed me to see. And then, as if the universe was listening to me from within myself, that light began to take form. A presence without a face, without a name, but carrying a feeling so familiar, I realized I had been loved before. Not the kind of love I'd ever known in this world, but deeper, pure, unshakable. It didn't speak aloud, but I understood. In a language beyond sound, thought touching thought, feeling meeting feeling, soul to soul. And the first thing I heard, or rather felt, was a question. Who do you think you are? I wanted to answer, But before I could form words, images flooded in. Scenes from every stage of my life. Versions of myself I had hated, hidden, or tried to forget. And I understood I was never any of those names I carried. I wasn't in any role I ever played. Not the failures, not the labels others gave me. I was something deeper than all definitions. But I had been so busy performing, I had forgotten who I truly was. You never truly lived. It wasn't a rebuke, it was a gentle truth, spoken the way the moon might whisper to the sea when it's time for the tides to turn. I asked it, "So, am I dead?" It smiled, not with a mouth, but with the entire space around me, and replied, "No, you're remembering." Then a door appeared before me. No handle, no keyhole, and yet I knew I could step through it. The real question was, would I? I turned back, looking toward the place where my body still lay, and what I saw made my chest tighten. A young woman, trembling, weeping, clutching a half-finished painting I had abandoned years ago. It was my sister, the only person who had kept my art hanging on her wall for the past 10 years, even though I hadn't called her once since our parents passed. I turned again toward the door, and that being, whether angel or light, spoke one final thing, something that has never left me. You will be shown what happens if you choose to return, but first, you must understand why you left. And so, I stepped through the door with no handle, not with my feet, but with every shattered part of me that had ever longed to be whole again. And on the other side, I didn't find heaven, I didn't see hell. I saw something even more real than either, the unvarnished truth about why souls get lost and how we can finally find our way back. The door didn't open into a place, it opened into a state of being. Everything stopped being about where and became about how. There was no more earth, no more sky, only light, and a stillness that seemed to have a heartbeat. In that moment, I no longer carried a sense of self. I brought no past, no fear, no need to prove I was worthy. I simply existed. And in that existence, I felt deeply known. Not known as in facts or data, but recognized, called by my truest essence. From within that light, a being emerged, not by walking, not in any way that resembled movement as we know it, but by simply being there, as if it had always been the center of everything. It didn't shine with a blinding brilliance, but with a kind of light that made you realize you were surrounded by love, the kind of love human language has no way to describe. It had no gender, no age, yet it carried the wisdom of thousands of years, and an expression more tender than a mother seeing her child for the first time. It said nothing, but I felt it knew everything about me, every shame I had buried, every moment I had wanted to give up, every night I screamed into silence and smiled through it the next morning. I asked it, "So, am I dead?" It smiled, not with a mouth, but with the entire space around me, and replied, "No, you're remembering." Then a door appeared before me. No handle, no keyhole, and yet I knew I could step through it. The real question was, would I? I turned back, looking toward the place where my body still lay, and what I saw made my chest tighten. A young woman, trembling, weeping, clutching a half-finished painting I had abandoned years ago. It was my sister, the only person who had kept my art hanging on her wall for the past 10 years, even though I hadn't called her once since our parents passed. I turned again toward the door, and that being, whether angel or light, spoke one final thing, something that has never left me. You will be shown what happens if you choose to return, but first, you must understand why you left. And so, I stepped through the door with no handle, not with my feet, but with every shattered part of me that had ever longed to be whole again. And on the other side, I didn't find heaven, I didn't see hell. I saw something even more real than either, the unvarnished truth about why souls get lost and how we can finally find our way back. The door didn't open into a place, it opened into a state of being. Everything stopped being about where and became about how. There was no more earth, no more sky, only light, and a stillness that seemed to have a heartbeat. In that moment, I no longer carried a sense of self. I brought no past, no fear, no need to prove I was worthy. I simply existed. And in that existence, I felt deeply known. Not known as in facts or data, but recognized, called by my truest essence. From within that light, a being emerged, not by walking, not in any way that resembled movement as we know it, but by simply being there, as if it had always been the center of everything. It didn't shine with a blinding brilliance, but with a kind of light that made you realize you were surrounded by love, the kind of love human language has no way to describe. It had no gender, no age, yet it carried the wisdom of thousands of years, and an expression more tender than a mother seeing her child for the first time. It said nothing, but I felt it knew everything about me, every shame I had buried, every moment I had wanted to give up, every night I screamed into silence and smiled through it the next morning. What made me cry was not the fact that I was so exposed, but that I was not judged. I was still loved, completely. Even when I was a mess, even when I had failed, even when I felt I didn't deserve anything, I was still loved. Then it sent something into me, not through words, but like a wave that passed straight through the center of who I was. You were never abandoned. Just 6 words, but they shattered every wall I had built around myself over the last 30 years. I had believed life had cast me aside, that I was some kind of cosmic mistake. But now I saw the truth was, I had abandoned myself first. I wanted to ask, "Who are you?" But before I could form the words, an understanding came. I am not a name. I am not a form. I am the one who has been with you from the beginning, who only appears when you finally stop and listen. I was stunned. Was this the guardian angel people always talk about? Was this the same intuition that saved me from an accident when I was 12? Was this the force that moved my hand to paint images I later couldn't remember creating? And if so, what else had I missed by not listening sooner? I trembled as I asked, "Why am I meeting you today?" It didn't answer directly. Instead, the light around me began to shift. A massive screen, not a screen, more like a living vision, appeared in front of me. On it, I saw myself living, but not the way I remembered. I saw moments I had forgotten. I saw myself as a child in art class, eyes lit up as I painted my first picture, and then that light dimmed when a teacher told me I had no talent. I saw myself at 19, playing piano alone in the university library at midnight, completely immersed in the music, until someone passed by and laughed, calling me a weirdo. I put the piano away for 10 years after that. I saw myself being cut off from my true essence, piece by piece, and each time a little light went out. I didn't die all at once. I died slowly, while still breathing. The light looked at me not with sadness or pity, but with a calm knowing, and said simply, "You are not broken. You just forgot how to listen." Choked up, I asked, "Listen to who?" It came closer, not with steps, but as light expanding, and placed what felt like a hand over my chest. The sensation was overwhelming, as if the whole universe was breathing inside my ribcage. Then I heard a heartbeat, not fast, not slow, but the true rhythm of my soul, unburdened by any performance or mask. Then it said something I will never forget. "Silas, you believed your life had no meaning, but even one moment of living in truth sends a ripple through heaven, because no light is meaningless, not even the lost ones." I dropped to my knees, not out of fear, but because, for the first time in my life, I wanted to live rightly. Not to prove anything, not to pay something back, but to be worthy of the gift I had nearly lost forever, another chance to become who I truly am. But what I didn't expect was that I hadn't yet been chosen. I wasn't allowed to return, not yet. Before that could happen, the angel would take me through a place every lost soul must walk through. A place without fire, but where your heart will burn. And there, I would face every version of myself I had ever denied, rejected, or buried. Would you dare to look at yourself the way I had to? If so, the next part will reveal something that even the strongest among us may not be able to face without tears. That light carried me, not through any vehicle, not by movement, but by pure transformation. Space itself seemed to dissolve from around me, then reassemble into something entirely unfamiliar. When the veil of light faded, I found myself standing in a place no map could define. A grayish-white space without clear form, yet somehow filled with the scent of my memories. There were no houses, no trees, no roads, only silhouettes. And all of them were me. I saw an 8-year-old boy in a faded shirt, clutching a paintbrush with eyes so bright it looked like he was about to paint the whole world. I saw a 16-year-old sitting quietly backstage after a performance, headphones on, replaying the faint applause of the crowd, trying to believe it was real. I saw a 20-year-old young man standing before someone he loved, swallowing the words, "I love you too," because he didn't think he was worthy. I looked at them, and they looked at me. No blame, no shouting, just the gaze of those I had left behind. I thought I had forgotten them, but they were still here. Each version of me held a piece, a fragment of my soul I had once cut away, sacrificed just to fit into life, to be accepted, to stop getting hurt. I stepped closer. There were no boundaries, no greetings, but I heard their voices in my head, all at once, each echoing from a different point in my life. Why did you leave me behind? I just wanted to paint. I just wanted to sing. I just wanted to be loved. But you were too afraid, so you buried me. Every time you said I'm fine, I lost another heartbeat. I collapsed, not out of guilt, but from the realization that I had never truly loved myself. I had spent my life trying to become what others needed, trying to be fine, trying to be mature. But I had never embraced the parts of me that were soft, scared, and broken, the parts that were just as much me as anything else. They didn't need to be erased. They needed to come home. In the distance, my angel still stood, silent, not intervening, not directing, because this was the part of the journey I had to walk alone. I knelt before those versions of myself. I looked into the faces of the children I had once been, the young men I had killed in silence, and for the first time, I spoke. I'm sorry. I remember you. I need you. If I get to live again, I'll live with all of you. No more hiding. No more running. And then something strange happened. Those versions of myself began to melt back into me, not disappearing, not dissolving, but becoming one. Every emotion, every gaze, every small forgotten dream returned like rivers flowing into a vast ocean. For the first time, I felt whole, not a puzzle of broken pieces, but a complete being. I stood up. The heaviness I'd carried was gone. Something stirred in my chest, not power, but wholeness. I no longer had anything to prove, because I had finally recovered the last missing piece of my soul. That's when the light, that angel, approached, and for the first time, it spoke not through visions or feelings, but in the language of human beings. You are ready. I asked, ready for what? It smiled. To see something not every soul dares to face, a glimpse of the future if you choose to live. I blinked. The future? Choose to live? I thought my choice had already been made. I thought everything was sealed. But the angel shook its head. Death is not a period. It's a pause. A soul has the right to choose. But before you choose, you must know what awaits on the other side. I swallowed hard. My heart beat again, not with blood, but with awareness. I was about to see what my life would become if I returned. The people I would meet, the changes I could make, the pain I could not avoid. But I would have the choice, and the price would not be cheap. You think you'd want to come back if given the chance? Then ask yourself this. Are you ready to see everything you'll lose? The pain is still waiting for you. And the most important question of all, If you return, will you truly live any differently? What comes next is a vision that left me speechless, the real consequence of still being alive. Not just for me, but for people I never imagined I would touch. This is the part that made me cry, not from sorrow, but because I finally understood why I was born. I don't know what that angel was made of, light, thought, a higher layer of reality, but I knew that when it said, "I will show you what happens if you choose to live," it wasn't speaking in metaphor. It was a direct collision with truth, undiluted, without excuse, with nothing left to hide behind. And what I saw next was not some vague inspiration. It was specific, detailed, the exact ripple effect of my choice to stay alive. Every moment, every consequence, every tiny vibration that would one day become a wave, I never imagined I could create. The first vision appeared. My sister Liana was standing in a small art gallery, her eyes swollen from crying, holding the last piece of music I had sent her. She wasn't crying because I had died. She was crying because she had just decided to give up painting and accept a corporate job. I saw the moment she almost signed the paperwork, pen in hand, heart breaking silently. And then, at that very second, the mailman arrived. In his hand was a letter I had started but never finished, with one single line: "Keep painting, even if it's only to heal." She read it, she wept, and she didn't sign. She opened her window, and she began painting again. Not because I told her to, but because I was still alive to write that letter. The second scene came. A 12-year-old boy in another state had just lost his father. He locked himself in his room and stopped speaking to anyone. One night, he stumbled across a video online. It was me, sitting at the piano, talking about my near-death experience, about the light I saw, about the fear of never being good enough. The boy cried, not because I was impressive, but because finally someone had said out loud the exact pain he didn't have words for. A week later, he sent me an email. In this version, I was dead and never read it. But if I had lived, I could have. I could have answered. I could have been the reason he didn't try to end his life 3 months later. Then I saw a middle-aged man, my old literature teacher, standing silently in front of one of my paintings, one I would have created after coming back. He once dismissed me, told me my art was too sensitive, too impractical, that I needed to be tougher to survive. But now, here he was, tears in his eyes, gazing at that canvas. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. I felt it. He had forgiven himself. And maybe, just maybe, I had something to do with that too. Then I saw myself continuing to live, still lonely, still in pain, still wrestling with sleepless nights. I saw the cruel comments when I shared my near-death experience, people calling it delusion, imagination. I saw myself being misunderstood, ridiculed, even labeled insane. But I also saw something else. I wasn't fighting anymore. I didn't try to prove anything. I didn't need people to believe me. I just lived. And somehow, that alone was enough to stir something deep in those who were still holding it all in, like I once did. The angel didn't speak, but I felt the question echo through the silence. You've seen what happens if you stay. Now, what do you choose? I said nothing, not because I didn't know, but because, for the first time, I didn't have to weigh the cost. I just knew I wanted to create a safe place for those who hadn't dared to live yet. I turned to the light, tears in my eyes, and whispered, "Let me go back." The angel watched me, no nod, no denial, but I understood. I had been chosen. And then, for the first time, it spoke not with words, but through presence. But remember, true light isn't found in high places. It's what you carry back and plant into each small choice. A wave of warmth flowed through me, not radiant, not glorious, just peace. The kind of peace that doesn't come from escaping pain, but from walking through it and keeping your heart soft. And then my body began to tremble, not in this world, but in the world I had left. You might think the hardest thing is dying. It's not. The hardest thing is coming back after you've seen the light and still having to live in a world that feels so dim. But I would return, not to relive an old version of myself, but to begin again as the person I was always meant to be, if I had never let fear define me. What came next was the moment I opened my eyes, and the world was no longer the same. But my family, my friends, society, they had no idea what I had seen. And that would become the real challenge. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I painted. But the paintings were no longer what they used to be. They weren't for galleries. They weren't for sale. They weren't made to be understood. They were simply records and color notes from a soul that had returned from a place beyond words. And strangely enough, it was those wordless paintings that began drawing the broken-hearted to me. A grieving mother leaned her head against one of my canvases and wept. A veteran with PTSD held my hand and whispered, "I don't know who you are, but I know you understand what I can't put into words." A young woman who once tried to take her life wrote to me, "I don't believe in God. I don't believe in the afterlife, but I believe your pain is real. And if you're still trying to live, maybe I can try again too." That's when I started to understand. I didn't come back to be believed. I came back to be real. And sometimes, when someone lives truthfully long enough, it slowly begins to open other hearts, even if it takes time. But the road isn't lined with roses. There are nights I wake up mid-dream, feeling myself fall back into the light. Sometimes I just want to sleep forever, to return to that place where no one asks who you are because you already are. There are days so lonely I sit in a dark room for hours, just listening to the rhythm of my heartbeat, trying to remember the whisper, "You were never abandoned." I'm not sharing this to convince you there's life after death. I'm asking you just one thing. If you knew, without a doubt, that one day you will die, and that your soul will have to face everything you left unresolved, would you live differently today? The next part of my journey is where I truly came back to life, not by what the hospital papers said, but through the smallest choices I made every day. Because that is where the real miracle lives. And if you think miracles only come as blinding light from heaven, maybe you've never really looked into your own tear-filled eyes, staring back at you in the mirror. I used to think that coming back to life, being given a mission, would make everything clear, noble, and strong. But it didn't. The truth is, miracles don't make you stronger overnight. They just make you more honest. And honesty, for someone who spent far too long living in a role like I did, is not always comfortable. I began to live each day as if I might slip out of this world at any moment. Not with fear, but with a sharpened awareness that every small action sends out a ripple. Like the time I paused to look at a homeless man on the street instead of avoiding his gaze. Like when I said a real, unguarded, "I'm sorry," instead of giving an excuse. Like the time I quietly turned down a shiny invitation just so I could sit beside my sister and paint with her. No one praised me for those things. No cameras captured them. But I knew in some deeper layer of reality, there's a place where every loving act leaves a trail of light. Not the kind of light that dazzles, but the kind that guides others home. And little by little, I became the person I had once prayed would show up in my life. I started writing again. Not to publish, but as a kind of dialogue with the self I left behind. Every night, I wrote letters to myself at 12, at 19, at 27. I apologized, I explained, I forgave. And as I did, the deepest parts of me, the ones I had once rejected, began to soften. They didn't scream anymore. They didn't beg for fairness. They just wanted to be acknowledged, to be touched by a truth that didn't need decoration. One afternoon, I returned to the train station, the very place where I had died. Nothing had changed. But this time, I wasn't afraid of the train rushing by. I sat quietly, watching people move past, their faces full of worry, rushing, loneliness. And I wondered, if they knew beings were walking silently beside them each day, watching them the way my angel had watched me, would they live any differently? A little girl passed by, clutching a doll. She looked at me, just like that look from the day it all happened, and smiled. Nothing strange, but nothing ordinary either. I felt a loop close around me, like a circle of destiny I had just stepped out of in time. And in that moment, I understood. I wasn't sent back because I was special. I was sent back because I was willing to see what most people run from. Since then, I've begun hosting small gatherings. Not sermons, not religious declarations, just stories. My story, told plainly, no sugarcoating, no fear tactics, just the truth, spoken like a living witness. And strangely enough, the less I tried to convince, the more people believed. Because they weren't listening with their minds, they were feeling with their pain. A 65-year-old man who had lost his wife came up and hugged me without saying a word. A young woman told me after one of my talks that she'd canceled her plans to end her life. A father who had once abused his son called him after 12 years of silence just to say, "I'm sorry," because he heard we speak about the parts of us we bury deep. I didn't do anything heroic. I simply told the truth. I simply lived. And it turns out, living truthfully, when done with courage, is the most powerful force there is. One night, I had a dream. In the dream, I was back in that place of light, but there was no angel this time, only a mirror. In the mirror, I saw myself, not the current Silas, but a version lit from within. Not perfect, but radiant, because he had embraced every dark part of himself. And then I heard a voice. It didn't come from anyone. It came from everywhere, like a hidden choir singing just for me. The real miracle is not coming back to life. It's daring to live differently after you've returned. I woke up with tears soaking my pillow, but I smiled, because for the first time in years, I wasn't playing a role anymore. I was simply myself, a soul that had been cracked, a man who had once lost hope, a small light in a vast night, but enough to guide someone else who might be lost. Have you ever wished for a second chance? To go back and do it all over again? The truth is, you don't have to die to start living again. All you have to do is look honestly at who you are, every fragile, flawed part, and say, "I still choose to live." What comes next is no longer my story. It's a message for you, the one reading, the one listening, the one whose heart might have just stirred in a way it hasn't in years. A calling, a question, an invitation, and a spark waiting for you to light it. I've stopped counting the days since I came back, because now each day is no longer a measure of time. It's a chance to love, to speak truth, to forgive, to create something small but real, so real. I started writing letters with no recipient, letters to souls who may never know me. I'd leave them on park benches, tucked inside old bookstore shelves, slid between sugar packets at quiet cafes I often visited. In each letter, I'd describe one small moment when I chose to live differently. A buried apology. A hug I once withheld. A glance I used to avoid. And I ended every letter with the same line. You are not alone. Someone else has been lost like you, and they're still searching for you through every small act of kindness. Strangely enough, a few weeks later, replies started arriving. No names, no return addresses, just shaky handwriting scrawled with trembling hands. I found your letter. It reached me right when I believed no one in the world needed me anymore. I cried in the middle of a grocery store while reading your letter. Thank you for not staying dead forever. I don't believe in God, but I believe you've seen the light, and I want to find my own. I folded each one gently, not with tears, but with quiet reverence, because I finally understood. Light doesn't have to be blinding to save someone. It just has to be real, and patient enough to stand still in the dark without leaving. I met a little boy with autism. He didn't speak much, but when I painted, he sat beside me, eyes never drifting. One day, he whispered so softly I almost missed it. "Are you real, or are you a dream?" I smiled, answered just as softly, "I'm both. But what matters is, do you feel I'm here with you?" He nodded and picked up a brush. I didn't teach him how to paint. I painted with him, the way the angel once simply stood with me in the light. No instruction, no pressure, just presence. One day, someone asked me, "Don't you ever feel tired? Doesn't the world still seem just as cruel?" I smiled. I used to think life was a test, but now I believe it's an invitation, a constant, persistent, patient invitation calling us to become the person our soul has always known we could be. They didn't say a word, but I saw their eyes welling up, as if something deep inside had just been stirred, a quiet bell that had been silenced by years of responsibility, pain, and the relentless pace of life. I didn't become a preacher. I didn't start a religion. I simply began telling the story of a man who died and came back. And I've come to understand something sacred. Resurrection doesn't come from a holy ceremony. It comes from a decision you make again and again every single day, not to turn your back on the light, even if that light is faint. I remember the last thing the angel said to me, just before I was sent. Back. Not in thunder, not in visions, but in a quiet truth that landed in my soul like a seed. Don't look for the light in high places. Bring it down low, where people are about to forget it ever existed. So I did. I started visiting people in hospice care. Not to preach, not to save, just to sit beside them, hold their hand and say, I've been there, and I came back. I don't have all the answers, but I carry one truth that I know with my whole being. You are never truly alone. Most didn't respond with words, but their eyes softened. Their breathing grew still. And when they left, I believed they walked toward a light they had always been part of. One late autumn afternoon, I sat by a lake. Leaves fell across the pages of my journal as I wrote this line, meant for you, the one reading these words right now. If you're alive but feel like you've already died, please remember, you don't have to wait for a near-death experience to start living honestly. You just have to pause, look inside, and ask, is there still a light in me waiting to be lit? I can't walk your path for you, but I can tell you this. On the other side of pain, there is a door with no handle. And if you dare to reach for it, it will open not by force, but by truth. You don't have to be Silas. You just have to be you. A version of yourself that's been bruised enough to understand, brave enough to begin again, tender enough to face the truth you once tried to outrun. And that alone is a miracle. My story isn't a conclusion. It's an invitation for those who feel like they're only half living, who believe they're not good enough, not strong enough, not worthy of meaning. I can't take you to the light, but I can tell you this with all I have. That light is already inside you, waiting. You don't have to die to return to it. You just have to come back. Not after death, but now, right now.